Mr. Avia? Here. Mr. Holland? Mr. Martinez? Here. Mr. Rodriguez Pina? Ms. Fano? Here.
He's here.
Yes. Mr. Vasquez? Ms. Weinberg? Secretary Pago? Here. Treasurer Fernandez Guzman? Here. Vice Chair Gutierrez? Chair Ferre?
I'm here, so we have a quorum.
Downstairs.
Ms. Gutierrez is here.
Yeah.
Quorum? Okay. Declaration of voting conflicts. Mr. Attorney?
Does any board member have any conflict with any of the items on the agenda? None, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any citizens' comments that want to be heard at this time? Is there anybody here who wishes to address the MDX board? Yes, sir. Your name?
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Halley, and I thank the chair and the board members for allowing me to speak today. If you could just allow me a few minutes, I'd like to speak about, well, first off, I'm with Halley Construction, Inc. We're a small business here in Miami-Dade County. We're also a local business. And what I'd like to speak to you about is MDX ITB 1402. This was a small job that was bid in March, $850,000. I know it's a small job, but to me it's an important one. And the Operations Committee recommended that this job not be awarded. The minutes of the Operations Committee reflect that they'd asked the job to be rebid. What I'm asking the board to consider now is to reconsider the Operations Committee's recommendation and to award the job to Halley Construction, which is my firm. The procurement itself was a small business set-aside. What this means is that it was 100% small business in terms of the subcontractors and the contractor all had to be a small business. Now, the two companies bid on this procurement. One was Williams Paving, and the other was us, Halley Construction. Williams Paving came in low as far as the bid going, and they were deemed lowest bidder. Now, what happens is Williams Paving, as deemed by the Operations Committee and staff, was not responsive. Reason being, they're not a small business, including the fact that their bid package only included 3% small business participation. On the flip side, my company, Halley Construction, submitted a bid package that was complete, pursuant to the RFP, and we met the requirement of the small business. Additionally, the staff recommendation was that both prices, both Williams Paving and Halley Constructions, were reasonable. So what I'm asking now is, if Williams Paving is knocked out, what I'm asking is for Halley Construction to be awarded the job.
Thank you, Mr. Haley. Hey, Mr. Executive Director.
Mr. Chairman.
You want to say something on this?
Not to interrupt, Mr. Ferrer, I don't think he was done with his comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you had concluded. The 3 minutes are up, so.
Oh,
I just like
no, but we could just let him know that the minutes
I just
are
like
up.
to explain quickly. There is a gap between Williams Paving's price and ours, and the reason for that gap is the premium considered for the small business. There is a very tangible and real premium to have 100% small businesses doing the work, and that is why MDX let this contract out. We were responsive, we met the requirements of the RFP, and what we're asking is that we be given the due justice to have the contract awarded. Anything else would be prejudicing us, because if you put our price back out there to rebid, we have a bullseye on our back, because everyone else now knows our price. And we got this fair and square, and we're asking for your now reconsideration to have this awarded to us.
Sure.
Thank you for hearing.
Mr. Executive Director.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, this is an item that was discussed at Operations Committee, and the action concludes at the Operations Committee. So my recommendation is to take Mr. Halley's comments. We will discuss it with the attorney and with staff, and we'll go to the next Operations Committee with a recommendation based on what we're hearing today, and either confirm the action of the Operations Committee or have the Operations Committee take a second look at it.
Please inform Mr. Halley of when that meeting is going to take place and the time and place so he can be present.
We have the date set already, Juan?
We have not set the date for the next stops.
We
but
will-
we're
we will let
working
you
with
know.
the
All right.
board secretary to
Thank you,
set
Mr.
the-
Well, I
Hawley.
appreciate your
Yeah,
consideration.
Thank you.
We will
All
let
right,
you know. Dan.
at this time, I want to recognize our new member, Javier Vasquez, and Javi, we're happy and honored to have you with us. I'm glad I think the governor made a good appointment, and I commend him and you, and welcome.
I'm sorry, see?
He's so new.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and board members, I look forward to serving with you, and I'm honored and blessed to be here. Thank you very much for the recognition.
Thank you. All right, now we're at the approval of summary minutes. You have the minutes before you.
Move them.
They've been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on the approval of the summary minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're now at the executive director's report. You wanted to say something?
Yes,
Madam
thank you,
Vice
Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask for an adjustment of the agenda to allow the performance measures to be added into this agenda today.
Okay. Without objection, the chair will be adding the performance measure of the executive director to the agenda. And is there anybody that wishes to object to that? If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as is now? It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Aye. Now it's going to be added at the end of the discussion period. Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members, and welcome, Board Member Vasquez. It's going to be hard to call you Javi because, but welcome aboard, and I look forward to working with you and in the future. My report today, I want to bring you up to date on a variety of issues that have been going on. The most pressing is the status of legislation. It's been very pressing. Today was a very active day. The status of House Bill 353 and 772, for all practical purposes, those two bills have stalled in both chambers. They did not make it to the third committee of reference. Therefore, they're not going to the floor vote on either side. Having said that, as long as there's a bill that has gone through committee, the elements of those bills can be amended to other bills, and that occurred today. This morning, House Bill 311 and Senate Bill 230 was being heard on the floor. And that is a bill for the Orlando Expressway Authority. In essence, it folds the Orlando Expressway Authority into a much bigger regional authority called the Central Florida Expressway Authority. Early this morning, a member of the Dade delegation amended to those bills the supermajority component and the revision of the board size, or reduction of the board size, giving the majority to the state, and the ethics provisions. Those amendments were filed this morning onto those bills. And, luckily, or for the good, well, when the hearing started and the item came to the floor, the person who had provided those amendments withdrew both of his amendments. And that was significant to us. The bill passed. It became Senate Bill 230. Without the amendments, and actually a very clean bill that will only affect Central Florida. With that said, we've got 3 more days of session. We are looking at every option that could possibly exist for these riders to be added to it. So as of today, we're okay. As of 4:15 on Tuesday, April 29th. But this doesn't end till Friday, so I'll keep you posted if anything happens. But as it stands right now, it looks clean. As far as the second item I wanted to talk to the board is, we've had the fortune of being represented by Richard Weiss in this time where we haven't had an in-house counsel. And I am grateful to Richard and his firm for the service he's provided to us. And I wanted to have a conversation with the board on how to proceed with the selection or the procurement or the advertisement of a new in-house counsel. The last process, concluded in a selection. We offered the position to the candidate, and the candidate, backed out. And we're back at 0. And I tend to believe that a lot of it has to do with the environment that we're in right now and the session and the legislation. So my recommendation, and what I'd like to get your feedback on, is that we go back out with the advertisement, we engage a search firm to help us cast a wider net, and that this board consider maybe an ad hoc committee that would help us in vetting the candidates as they come through. And we've got many attorneys and many folks that have worked with attorneys on the board to assist in that process. So that's an item that I want maybe for conversation now or at a committee. It's up to the board.
All right, well, let's take it one step at a time, Javier. So the chair, as long as it doesn't take more than 5 minutes, we can discuss it now. If it takes more than 5 minutes, then we'll have to put it off till the end of the meeting. As far as the committee is concerned, I think it's an excellent idea. I think we have 4 attorneys on this board. Is that correct? One? Are you an attorney? 2?
Holland?
3, and Al is 4, right? Is that who we have? So Mr. Martinez, since you are here, and Javi is the newest, so I won't appoint him chairman. I'm going to appoint you chairman. So you're the chair, and you get your other 3 colleagues together. And here's what I would like to recommend: that you would the executive director, with a search firm, whittle it down to what? 10, 6, 7?
And yeah, typically, Mr. Chair, what we've done is staff will vet the applicants, because we get a lot of applicants. Many don't meet the minimum requirements. And then we call in for interviews a smaller subgroup.
Okay, so in other words, you would vet it down to 6, and then the committee would vet it down to 3.
Mr. Chair, would it be outside of my purview to perhaps sit down with the director and some of the committee members to discuss the qualifications that we're using? Is that one of the difficulties we're having? Are they too harsh or
Absolutely.
too restrictive? Would the chair have any objection to me doing that?
On the contrary, I recommend that you do that, and then you come back to the next board with your recommendations as to the change. I think, Shelley, you were next, and then Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the spirit of diversity, I would like to volunteer to be on that committee because they're all men and they're all attorneys.
You are hereby appointed.
And I'm neither.
You're appointed.
Thank you.
I have nothing else to say.
Okay. Is there anything else? Is there, so what you're going to come back with then, Mr. Martinez, is, one, the rules of the game as to how we're going to do this, as to whether or not you recommend any changes. 2, that would include, and my recommendation is that the executive director whittle it down to 6, and then the committee whittles it down to 3, and the 3 come to the board without ranking. Okay, without ranking, so that the board would choose from the 3 you would recommend. Have I missed anything?
No. Yeah, what I will do is I'll
You're on
work
the
with.
committee.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. The original pool, is there nothing there that you can pull from either?
And we've looked at it, and a lot of the folks in the original pool that we interviewed, no, well, actually, one of them that we were trying to recruit took the position in Miami Beach. Another one took the city of Miami position. I think what's happened is that the net that we cast wasn't wide enough, and it was very local, which is good.
Yeah.
But you know, what's happened to the authority over the last year and a half is also very public. And I think that also, you know, sends, you know, message. And I think now that we've overcome it, I think is the right time to put it out and discuss an approach.
All right, is there any further discussion on this item? If not, go ahead then.
Got it, okay. The next item, I'll let the treasurer and Ms. Schaefer address.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
if I may?
Yes, ma'am.
You had, when you brought up this conversation, there were 2 items to that item.
Yeah,
That your
there was.
position on going out, but also your position on
Yeah,
our
on-
current
Oh,
council.
that's,
Yes.
yeah, what, a current council right up to this time, and I thank you for not letting me forget that I had forgotten my thought there. We've been very fortunate that Richard Weiss has served on the dais for us, and he's done it pro bono. He hasn't charged us. I've already had conversations with Richard where I've asked him for a fee because I'm not comfortable. This wasn't supposed to go on for 6 months. So therefore, we've been talking. We will have a budget meeting in the next couple of weeks. You will see a line item for council support, and I've been talking to Richard and his firm.
I'd like this committee, Mr. Martinez, that you head will also advise us on that issue.
Okay. The next item I wanted to bring the board up to date is the bond series 2014, but I'll let the treasurer and Ms. Schaefer get more into specifics into the schedule. Needless to say, we want to go as fast as possible to the market. We've been fortunate in timing. I do want to remind.
Wait. You have to tell us a little bit more than that.
I was going to leave it to the treasurer. Yeah, I was going to leave it to the treasurer and let the treasurer and the CFO address it in more detail specifically.
All right.
But it's important to me, which is why I bring it up. Now, for the newer board members, every year we have our budget process, and Board Member Vasquez, you're walking in. Now, you're not new anymore. No, Mr. Rodriguez Pina here. But the budget process typically is in April. And April, by the end of April, we typically have a budget that is presented to the board. Because of the financial impacts of the legislation, we requested to move the budgeting process out a month. With that said, we are holding a budget workshop on the 12th. You will be receiving a draft budget, and we hold it here in the boardroom. And we will be meeting with all the board members to go over the specific line item budget. We break it up. We will discuss it with you prior to that meeting. So I wanted to bring it up to you. Right now, it is on the calendar for the 12th of May, and except for any issues that might come up, we hope to hold it on the 12th of May. That leads me to the next item, which was going to be on the agenda, and it will not be. And I will ask the Secretary to speak to it a little bit as well. It's the status of the Miami Intermodal Center transfer. We put it on the agenda again, hoping that the final agreement would be before you today. It could have been before you today. It would have been a last-minute bring a stack of papers and say approve. And it was my recommendation to the Secretary that that's not fair to the board. We've had this conversation. We had it back in December. There were some open items. We've closed those open items, and that's why I would like to.
No.
We've closed those open items. I'm comfortable that we have reached a resolution on all of those items.
All right,
So my recommendation is that we have a special meeting right before the budget or right after the budget workshop just to deal with the MIC and approve that.
Okay, now the reason why this becomes important is that I would remind you, and of course, Javier, you were not on the MDX board at the time, but in December, we had this discussion, and I think it was December, but what I decided as chair was that we would have a committee of the whole. So in other words, there is no subcommittee to deal with this thing. The committee is everyone. In other words, all 12 of us, since there's only 12 at this point, are part of the committee. Now, I'm probably going to be out of the country from May 6th to May 21st. So the vice chair, if she's available, will be chairing these discussions in this process, if that's all right with you. And I have to make a decision as to whether or not to cancel this trip, not for anything to do with MDX, but for personal reasons, in the next day or two. So I may be here, or the probabilities that I will not be here, but then you will be chairing it, if that's all right with you. The MIC is one of the most important decisions, of course, that we have. And when Javier told me about the fact that we had all the information, but that it was in pieces, I think this is much too important a decision for us to make without really being fully informed, without our having the opportunity to ask any and all questions. For example, one of the things that I asked the executive director to address is that I want to make sure that legally, Mr. Weiss, this cannot become a vehicle to do other types of things that are not related to the MIC or to transportation issues. In other words, that the monies that we make, and because I think this is going to be a very successful, financially profitable deal hopefully, for MDX. and I want to make sure that the monies that flow from this entity are not used for non-related transportation issues or for transportation issues that this board does not want to deal with. For example, and I'm not saying that it should be specifically on, but I don't think that we can pay, for example, Transit's operating budget in Miami-Dade County with these funds. And I guarantee you there's going to be pressure to do that. I think it's important that we have a structure that the monies made that flow from the MIC operation in the next 20, 30, 40 years be used for transportation issues that this board agrees with.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. And I guess I wanted to give the Secretary the opportunity because it's been a long road, and I thank you for your support.
Yes.
No, I think to echo the Executive Director's report on the MIC, I think, I know we're right there. We could have published it, and like Javier said, brought a very thick agreement, but to do justice to the board, there were very good questions asked in December, and we wanted to come back to show to you how we've addressed all the issues by the board.
I think it's important, since we have to go up before the county commission, that we be as united and that all the questions that they may have, that I'm sure many of you will have been answered, and that we've really gone through this with a fine comb, and make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Are there any questions of the Executive Director on his report?
Thank you.
If not, thank you very much, Mr. Executive Director. General Counsel's report.
No report.
The MPO representative report. I'm the MPO rep. There was no meeting. The meeting was canceled. The next meeting is May 22nd. I'll be coming back from Europe for that meeting on the 21st. So there's really nothing that's happened.
And Mr. Chairman, at that meeting, we were requested to make a presentation on our work program, which we will.
Yeah, the chair and others have asked us to make a presentation. The Executive Director will inform you of the time, the day and the time, and any of you that can be there. I think that would be very helpful.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind me going back one
Please.
second. I'd be remiss if I did not advise you of the very good cooperation that we are getting from the legal staff at the Department of Transportation. Carmen and Mr. Filer are working very closely with us to try to get this thing done properly. And the second thing is that to the extent that the Attorney Selection Committee is interested in input from us in terms of what they're looking for,
I certainly hope so.
We would be very happy to provide that.
Let
as long as
me
you don't try to steal any of my people.
let me, Richard, on behalf of all of us, tell you how very grateful we are for your absolutely incredibly professional and excellent work that you've done. And thank you again. Treasurer's report. Mr. Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maria, if I could, let's go through the financials first, and what I would like to do is then cover the timing on the bond issue immediately thereafter and cover the highlights of the Fitch ratings, which I think are highly important.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. On the Treasurer's report, as it relates to revenue, we posted year-to-date through March $96.4 million compared to the budget of $96.1 million. Included in there is a $6.5 million accrual due to the transition, and we believe that the accrual will be caught up by the end of June. So as you can see, overall revenue is pretty flat to where the budget is. On the expenses, nothing really eventful to speak of. Total expenses, $75.2 million compared to the budget of $77 million. That's a $1.8 million favorable variance. That's mainly due to the transition of the toll-by-plate vendors. Overall, we posted a net revenue of $22.8 million, about a little bit under 12% of where we projected last year when we put the budget forward. With that concludes my Treasurer's report.
If we now could get a sense from you of the timing on the pricing on the proposed bond. I want to say that we continue to have luck on our side. and it is important that we move as quickly as possible to the pricing stage and placement of the bond.
Yes, Mr. Treasurer. As you know, we did approve all the bond documents at the February board meeting. We held a public hearing where the public had an opportunity to speak on that item. Due to the legislation issues, we placed the bond process on hold. We have been moving forward all the documentation, the general engineer consulting report, the traffic and revenue report, both have been finalized as of yesterday. That will be distributed to the rating agencies by Friday. And after the legislation session, which ends on Friday, Monday afternoon, the rating agencies will receive the preliminary offering document, the POS, which is a disclosure document. They have advised us that it'll take about 2 weeks to get the ratings, and afterwards we will go ahead and mail the POS. We're hoping to get to pricing early June, late May is really where our target is. We will probably do an investor relations roadshow sometime in late May. So we will price, hopefully the market will hold, beginning of June, and then we'll go ahead and close the transaction by year end, June 30th. And
So your target date for the pricing is when?
the last week in May or the first week in June. And it really hinges upon when the rating agencies will get us our credit rating. But all the documents are complete at this point in time.
Thanks to Jose Pagan, who's, I think I saw him in the back of the room. I'm sure, like you, get the J.P. Morgan weekly, and I read the damn thing, and I'll tell you, this week it started to worry me a little bit because it's beginning to quiver a little bit.
That's okay.
So let's hope that timing is. I think we have the wind on our side, and hopefully we'll be able to make this before the end of May.
I can honestly tell you that we're in a lot better shape than I thought we would be. So luck is still on our side. Marie, could you cover the issuance of the Fitch release on our rating? That's important, and I'd like to say a few words after, if I could.
Yes. The Fitch report is an annual surveillance. They do an annual review of our credit, and I really did try my best to have them wait until we got to the new bond issuance. Unfortunately, due to internal compliance, they couldn't put it off. But the Fitch had affirmed MDX as A- with a stable outlook, and the rationale for their rating was that we have shown them some very strong coverage ratios. They did comment on the completion of open road tolling, that we've moved forward on that. They comment on our ability to deliver projects within the budget that we previously presented to them, as well as our ability to manage our costs. Those are all positive aspects of the rating. The rationale for indicators to be watched is obviously legislation issues, our ability to continue to manage our cost, and to continue to deliver the work program as laid out in the 2015-19 program. So that was really just high level of the rationale on the annual surveillance. They could have a different perspective, hopefully, when we show them the financing plan of the Series 2014A, and they review the documents in a little bit more detail. I don't anticipate. I was hoping to have maybe a positive outlook, but I still think it's positive for MDX to show the management and the governance of the organization how strongly an outside rating agency feels on it.
And that is exactly what I wanted to echo. This is a very strong affirmation from a third party who is extremely granular in their analysis and critical in their analysis of the decisions made by this board and the direction that this agency has taken and the performance of this agency. So we should take this with great pride and feel comfortable that in spite of all of the noise that was surrounding the agency, negative noise that was surrounding the agency and its possible finances, this rating was affirmed by Fitch. So
Tremendous.
Congratulations.
That was tremendous. Really is tremendous.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report, Mr.
Well, I
Chair.
think I speak for all of us in congratulating Marie in particular, but you, Mr. Treasurer, for the wonderful work that you and your staff, Marie, and our consultants have done. And I think we also have to thank God for the good luck that the market's held on so far. All right, so we are now in committee reports and the intergovernmental And public and the operating committees are going to get waived. Is that correct? Anybody want to? So we're now into the consent agenda, which is item 8 before us. Is there a motion on 8A, which is travel approval? It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Further discussion on item 8A. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're now on item 9A, which is the regular agenda, MDX procurement contract. Go ahead.
MDX procurement contract number MDX 14-13, electronic vehicle charging community information network, endorsed by the Operation Committee 21814.
Mr. Chairman, this item went before the Operations Committee on February 18th, and at that meeting, the implementation plan presented by Allvision, our vendor, our contractor, was presented. It contemplates 3 sites that could potentially be developed for EV charging stations / community information network / billboard, to be very clear. At the February 18th meeting, the Operations Committee reviewed and thoroughly discussed the plan and directed staff to finalize an agreement outlining the terms of engagement. One of the big issues that the committee had was defining what the risks were for the agency as far as the outlay. The decision over the last year and a half as this project evolved, or this negotiation evolved, was that the authority would front the capital for the actual construction of the 3 sites, if their 3 sites are there. And that is an outlay. But I think the committee at the operations wanted to know what is the risk in phase 1, which is the entitlement process or the obtaining the permits. So we structured an agreement that has phases, and it's spelled out in the agenda item report. The first phase is the entitlement or the permitting approval phase. What we've structured is a maximum of 18 months for the vendor to obtain the permits, and that the maximum contribution by MDX would be $150,000 for ancillary non-capital cost. These are the types of costs that I anticipate: legal review, engineering review, potential survey, potential underground, looking at undergrounds, anything that would support application of a permit. If those permits are not obtained within the 18-month period, we can walk away, and that's it. Now, if permits are obtained, and the way we structured this was that we took into account that it's 3 sites, but we also took into account that maybe not all 3 sites obtain a permit. What happens if only 1? So a lot of the costs are broken up per site. There's a management fee where we engage the vendor to manage this program, and it's on a per site basis. The construction is broken up per site, not to exceed $1 million per site, and that's all inclusive. The way we anticipate this agreement working is that if the permits look like if they're going to be approved, it'll come to this board. We will get to go ahead to go to phase 2. It's within the contract, but it requires a written approval to get to phase 2. Now, there are minimum requirements, and we installed minimum revenue requirements so we can establish a break-even in the early years, because it is our understanding in working with the vendor that there's a ramp-up period, and that's no different than tolling. So we wanted to make sure that the only outlay would be, if there's a permit, we already put out $150,000. If there's a permit and we're going to construct, that construction dollar is amortized over 5 years, and that the only thing coming out of our pocket is that upfront money, but we're getting it paid upfront from gross rather than from net. So that's the way it was structured. What I'll do is I'll stay quiet and I'll respond to any questions or comments. But what staff is seeking is your approval of this agreement in substantial form, so that we can finalize an agreement and get the first phase started and either have a project or not have a project.
All right, before I open it up for discussion by the board, I'd like to recognize the people from All Vision here and see if they want to make an opening statement of any kind.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry about that. I just want to thank for working in tandem with the executive.
Your name and address for the record.
Sure. Josh Scharfberg with All Vision. I just wanted to thank the Chair as well as the Executive Director. We've been working on this project for quite some time. We've been in a number of operation committee meetings, and based on all of your feedback, I think we have a great project and look forward, hopefully, to your recommendation to bring it forward today. So thank you.
All right, it's open for questions.
And of the operations
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. The chairman of the Operations Committee, excuse me. I recognize you.
No, well, I defer to
To the
fellow member
formerly
Weinstein.
new board
Yes, to
member?
the- and then I'll be happy to give my comments.
Thank you, Chairman. And I apologize, I actually missed the last Operations Committee meeting, so if this was answered, forgive me. I only have 2 questions on the actual timing of the contract. Why 7 years? And when you say at the discretion of MDX, that is up for board vote, not at the discretion of the director. Is that clear on the
I
contract?
didn't understand that second question. The first one was 7 year. Why 7 years?
States at the discretion of MDX for self-renewal process after 7 years. Is that meaning the MDX board back up for votes? Can we clear that up, that
Yes.
language, if that's the case?
The way all of our contracts are structured is when you execute an optional service or a term, it goes to committee, we make the recommendation, we back up the recommendation, and then the board approves it. So it's no different than any other contract that we have that has a base term and then optional years.
Same.
All contracts must come to the
Yeah,
board.
so it all comes back to the board at some point.
And the 7 years, is that?
The 7 years, the original
Not a norm.
agreement, the original proposal by All Vision was that they would carry the entire risk of the project and that they would want 50% of the net revenue, but they wanted a 30-year agreement. In having conversations with many of you on the board, 30 years was not acceptable. So we went back and forth into thinking of what would make sense. The longest term contract we have is a 7-year contract, and that's the one, that's the asset maintenance. So that's why it's 7 years. It also affords us the ability that once we said we would make the capital investment, it allows us to amortize it over the 5 years and recoup it off the top. That's the only reason we did the 7 years.
Thank you.
So I have a lot of things to say. First of all Vision, you've been very patient. I think you've been very responsive to, and we've been in several meetings together, at least from my standpoint, and I know you've come back and forth, and I think you've done a very good job of walking this through a somewhat cumbersome process. Going back to what Luz, if I can get your attention, there's 2 components to this. There's a management component, and then there's an operational component. So I think it's important to point out that the operational component is 7 years with 2 7-year automatic renewals.
Right.
Okay, that's 21 years. I just want to point this out, and I'm very consistent with what I've said in the past. I just want to point that out. The question that you had was on the management side of it,
Right.
which is a 7-year, and that's the one that has to go back, and we get a chance to take a look at it, right? So I have a question, and then I'd like to make a suggestion. So my first question is, if you read the narrative, which is very well done, we talk with MDX keeps 75% of the net revenue.
Correct.
All Vision retains 25% of the net revenue. Is that accurate?
That is
Mr.
correct
Director?
if they meet, if there are
If
certain
they meet the minimum
provisions.
revenue
Right.
component.
Right.
Right? On the second page or on the back page, there's a bullet that says MDX must profit, and then there's a definition, net revenue collected minus all expenses, right?
Correct.
At least 80% of the minimum revenue. The minimum revenue is $400,000 per station, 1.2 million times 0.8 gets you 9. So we have to profit $960,000. Is that accurate, Mr. Director?
You're correct.
Okay. This type of contract, I can tell you, is a very coveted contract, particularly when you have 3 7-year, essentially it's a 21-year agreement. It's a very coveted thing. Why? Because we're a public agency, and the revenue here, although not guaranteed, is very solid. You can count on it. I'm not an underwriter, but if you underwrote it, I would imagine it would be very solid. So what I've been saying from day one whenever I met with these very competent gentlemen is, if we take a minimum of 500, let's say, per station, and you do a net, their take is going to be roughly 300,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you apply a cap rate of a 6, which I'm guessing could be even lower, that's about $4 million. we're upfronting the capital, so, which we're financing over 5 years. So in theory, we could upfront the capital, and they could sell the income stream, right? And so we've financed what would be a $4 million pocket transaction. What I'm suggesting, and what I suggested from the beginning, and I'm asking...
Okay, can they do that without our approval? They can sell their contract
Well,
without our approval?
that's where I'm going. Is there a mechanism, because one of the questions I had, because they've done all the work, right? So is there an incentive, is there a participation that MDX has in the event that All Vision decides to sell the income stream? Do we have a participation, number one? And number two, do we have the right to approve or disapprove? Almost like a right of first refusal. So those are the two things I want to bring.
Let me, if I could respond just on the assignment. The contract currently says that the consultant is hereby prohibited from assigning this agreement without the express prior written consent of MDX, which consent may be withheld at MDX's sole and absolute discretion.
That was in response to that particular question that was asked at the committee meeting.
Mr. Attorney, is assigning the same
that company
thing?
does.
Is assigning the same thing as selling? I think there's two, maybe we're saying two different things. Assigning means I'm going to give the contract over to you. He's talking about...
Very good question.
He's asking a different question.
Counsel, I defer to counsel.
Well, I don't know how you could sell this without assigning it. I mean, you're basically assigning the right to a specific stream of revenue. I mean, you could assign it without selling it, but I don't think you can sell it without assigning it.
Yeah, who's going to buy something?
I'm not against I'm not against the sale of the stream. I'm against the sale of a stream without our approval or participation, because if it weren't for us, but if it weren't for them, so it should be a mutual mechanism. I think my question was answered.
So that's been answered, and it is in the contract.
We will ensure that it's in the contract. Very clear.
Wait, hold on. Are you finished, Jose?
I am, and thank you for asking. Thank you. I'm finished.
Sorry, but Jose, the second part, since I'm the treasurer, you didn't get answered, which is participation.
I would have liked to have seen a participation, but if we have the right to approve a sale,
That's where
then
you
at
get-
that point in time, if we can say no, or we can say we'll take 50%, you know, or whatever's negotiated at that time.
Right, and you're approving it substantially in the form attached, and I'm taking careful notes, so.
Understood.
We will
Thank you, Mr.
make
Chair.
sure that that provision is covered.
Al?
Yeah, it's got an automatic extension, right? And so long as the sites are operational and generating the minimum revenue. Are there any other obligations, management obligations, upkeep obligations that should be, can they be in default other than for that? That's what I'm saying.
They have to meet the minimum return.
I will tell you that there's a provision in the contract that we can terminate at 30 days. These are parcels that are for transportation purposes. We're trying to get non-toll revenue out of it. So if it's not being upkept and it's not meeting certain revenue expectations, there's really no reason to continue the contract. So that's why the 30-day.
And when they are otherwise in default, then that.
And we have a 30-day.
Hold on, because you guys are going very fast, and, you know, you understand the contract very well, you're an attorney. But for us that are a little bit slower, what you're saying is that at any time, for any reason, we can terminate this contract on a 30-day notice, for any reason that we have, because the majority of this board decides that they don't like the way this place is being kept, and it could be brought up by a member of the board that this contract be terminated on a 30-day notice, and the majority tells the director to terminate it. Is that it?
I don't think there's no qualifications to the termination.
There are no qualifications to the
We give 30-day
termination.
notice, and we can terminate.
No.
It's our property.
It's our property, and we're the ones that can terminate. Is that correct? Al, any other questions? All right. I think Maritza was first.
Yep.
Shelley, you were next, and then Rick.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to go back to a couple of things that have been brought up. This thing about automatic. Automatic has to be tied to something. A renewal of a contract has to be tied to a performance measures. And it can't be minimum. It can't be based on the minimum benchmark, because that means we're not allowing for someone to be challenged to take it to the next level. So the word automatic should not be in there at all. And I think that when we use automatic in a contract, it becomes an issue. I'll sit, as long as I do the bare minimum, it's okay, it's automatic. No, it's got to be touched, it's got to be aligned with a performance measure, and it's got to exceed the minimum based on the contract. That's the first thing that I have an issue with, okay? So if it has automatic, I won't be voting for it. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, another item that I really have concerns with too, and I would like for this to be addressed. I understand that for the work and the performance and the money that they're going to get is 25% commission, and that's fine. Most agencies on media get a 15%. In this case, this is a higher, this is more, this is bigger than that, so it's 25% commission. Fine. But I also see on the management side, they receive $100,000 per year per site. Okay? Hey, now I have to step back and say, hey, wait a second. What are you doing for the $100,000 that we can't do for that $100,000? And what are you really going to do for that 100? Because that's not enough. I'm paying you 25 to do your job and bring in the accounts, but now I'm also going to pay you $100,000 a year to managing. To me, I hate to throw this word out. This doesn't sit well, honey, unless you want me to throw out what I'm really thinking. So it doesn't sit well. Explain to me why the $100,000.
As I said at the Operations Committee meeting, there's two ways of doing this. We can do all of the work internally. We can do
Per site.
It's per site.
Hold on.
Let me.
Wait, I understand. I
Can address it.
I have members that were telling me, stand correct, that it's 300,000, but it's 100,000 per site.
Correct. As I mentioned at the Operations Committee, the analysis that we did was for the services of management, which will entail many different types of employees, and we don't have them all in-house. We could do it with a general consultant. We have to estimate what that cost would be loaded, having them in-house, or hiring a consultant. So when the estimate came in at $100,000 per site, or $300,000 for these 3 sites, for the services that we're going to do, like I said back in February, was it reasonable? It is reasonable. That was the analysis that we did. For me to manage this, I would have either to hire a person that has all the skills necessary for sales of advertising and legal and engineering and all that, which you can't find, so you're going to have different people doing it. We use third party. We use general consultants. So then I would have to calculate what I'm paying the general consultant plus the multiplier. So that's how I did the analysis.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Let me go,
Ms.
if
Vice
I
Chair.
may, Mr. Chair, if I may go
Please, go
back,
ahead.
because
Go ahead.
I'm still not hearing what I want to hear. Okay, I don't comprehend. They're going to get paid 25% commission out of the work they do. They're going to manage those sites at 100,000. Do you have a comparable, what it would cost us to do the 100? And let me tell you where I'm going with this, okay? This is a contract for one thing. It's growing to something else. Here's where I have an issue. The issue is that portion, given that it's something new, should really go out to bid. So then we know what it really should be. And we always have the option. Why, if this contract is a contract with an idea and it's sort of like an advertising to do, a station and to sell advertising on it and this and that and that, I'm trying to figure out now how the management of those sites are into this part of the component. I just feel that it needs to be outside of this agreement, that it should not be part of this agreement, that it doesn't belong. I just feel I need to be convinced that it belongs.
Excuse me, because I'm not sure what you're saying.
Why the 100,000 for the management
In other words,
is part of this
in other words,
agreement?
you feel that there should not be a management fee for and a profit of 25% of the net.
Yeah.
In other words, you think it ought to be
No.
one or the other,
No,
or?
no,
I think
you're
I
doing
heard
a
it-
job, you get paid for that job.
Heard it a little bit differently.
No, you're doing a job, you're getting paid for that job. That's 25%. Now, that's fine. You're doing a job and you're getting paid for that job, and that's 25%. But now you're doing another job that was never contemplated here, and we are also giving this vendor that portion.
Okay, That's
That's
what I
what
heard.
I'm going back to.
Would you preclude the vendor from bidding on that
No.
part as a separate item?
No,
Okay.
as bidding. I think that the bidding has to be put into play, because now all of a sudden, we've got these stations that are out there. And right now, we're only contemplating 3 as the beginning, as a pilot. But, you know, in reality, the electric stations will be growing because it's getting popular, more and more popular. I just think that it needs to be a separate
Yeah,
item.
I'll
following?
go back because we had that conversation back in preparing for the February meeting on this management fee. And the services that they're going to perform. See, here's the issue. The authority takes it upon itself to pay for these sites or pay for the construction. That means we have to bid the construction ourselves, and it goes through a process. That's not what we want to do. This was a proposal that they gave us as part of non-toll. They wanted to take all of the risk. They just wanted 50% of the revenue, and we didn't feel comfortable with that, and nor did we feel comfortable with the 30-year term that they asked us for. So in negotiating this over the period of time, we started trying to break it back to the point where, well, what if we pay for this? What if we break down the time frame? The management fee, the reason there is a 7-year go or no-go is because it is my estimation, and I think I've had this conversation with the vendor, is that by the 7th year, we should be pretty skilled at what it takes to manage it, and we may not want to extend that portion of the agreement. We may just do it internal. It may make more sense to do it internal. Right now, this whole thing is not a skill that we have in-house.
Well, would you define management? Define manage.
Yeah, and I think Josh came on, and I would like him.
Maybe I could read what management
specific.
is in the contract.
Yeah.
The tasks under this phase include, but are not limited to, ongoing advertising sales management, content monitoring to comply with MDX sponsorship policy, revenue collection, auditing, signage, and maintenance of the sites. The consultant is also responsible for timely payment for third-party operating expenses such as insurance, electricity, connectivity, and signage associated with the sites.
If I may.
Please.
Thank you very much for clarifying. I defined management, something that was actually happening at those stations.
No.
Okay? And it's not even that. No. Now we're taking 100,000 and we're giving them 25 to do the work. No. It's one of the same. The fact that you have to manage your team to sell and your crew, that needs to come out of your 25%. The fact that you need to keep your record keeping, that needs to come out of your 25%. That is only fair and just. Because who's going to pay for our 25% to keep record keeping and make sure that you guys come back to the board and tell us exactly where the last penny is coming from? I don't know. No. 25% and 100,000 are of one of the same. Listen, hey, it's the same service, because if you're selling it and you're sending out the invoice, you have to control what you're doing. It has to cover 25. Now, if you wanted to ask for 30, you fight and you ask for 30. But, you know, at this point, I am going to introduce the word. This is double dipping, sweetie.
All right, well, I think, Josh, you have the right to respond to that, of course, so.
Madam Vice Chair, thanks for your comments. I just want to clarify, we're not the sales agent here. So it's not necessarily double dipping. The 25% pursuant to our original contract is commission. So a project that I implement, for example, the traveler's marketing agreement for the RAPs and the safety patrols, we get a commission. We're not managing that program whatsoever. We get a commission, and quite frankly, MDX is managing that program. This program, we get our commission, which is what that 25% is. However, we are also implementing this program. We're not the sales agency. So it will be a third-party sales company that will be an outdoor advertising vendor or a sales company. It's not us. None of those costs come out of us as pursuant to this agreement. So we manage that, and we're incentivized. So that $100,000 is for us to increase your revenue, to manage that sales partner, to audit, to collect the revenue. I'm incentivized with you solely to make sure that there's the most gross money, because that's how I get paid on my percentage. There's a lot of intricacies. Because we're implementing this project, it would make sense, at least in our recommendation and in talking with staff and all our other clients, that the company that implements this is usually the best to manage it, at least initially. There are a lot of nuances, but I just wanted to clarify, we're not the sales company.
Mr. Alberger, let me ask you a question, because you have other contracts around the country, right?
Yes, we do, sir.
How many contracts do you have?
Probably domestically 12 to 20.
12 to 20.
Sure.
In all these other contracts, do you get a fee, a percentage fee, like you're getting here with 25%?
Sure. Our fee usually ranges, quite frankly, this is the lowest. Our fee right now ranges anywhere from 30 to 50%.
Taking all the risk, which you're not doing in this case.
No, there's a lot where it's also a third party that takes the risk, not us nor our client, but it's not our clients.
All right,
That's
now,
correct.
in those contracts, do you also have a management fee in addition to the percentage?
We do not, and the sole reason there that we do not have a management fee is we usually have a higher percentage than 25. And in working with staff, you know.
So in your mind, as you negotiated this contract, because of the fact that you went down from 50% to 25%, this $100,000 per year per entity is a part compensation for that reduction.
Sure. Well,
Because and your expectations in your numbers are that by the time this is mature and working functionally, how much do you think each one of these units will be producing?
As a gross standpoint, this industry is going anywhere from 10 to 15% annually.
Yeah.
Certainly that'll decrease as more digital signs get built out. So we anticipate it could be anywhere from $750 to $1.5 million per site.
Per site, you expect that they'll be from $750 to $150.
Correct.
And the $100,000 is just net? Your net figures?
They are.
In other words, the $750 to $1.5 million is a net figure of which you get 25%. Okay.
No, we get the complete 100,000. That's a net figure.
No, I understand. You get a $100,000 fee per year, but you also get 25% of the net.
That's correct.
So if there's $1 million net, you get $250,000.
That's correct.
So in other words, you're getting 100,000 times 3 is 300,000, plus you're getting, if you're making $1 million per unit,
That's
you're getting 250,000 per unit. Is that correct? Or is that $1 million for all three?
That's $1 million per site, so it would be $3 million of the gross.
So if we're getting $3 million, then you are getting 750,000 plus 300, so you're making over $1 million.
Correct. There's one thing I want to just caveat here, and I understand all the talk about the 7 years and the extensions. The biggest risk for us is we've spent probably $300,000 on this project to date, and still substantial time, substantial resources that aren't reimbursed. And as the executive director have said many times, you can terminate this with no say from us, which puts us, so I understand that all the concern that you have here, but the risk and the work and the opportunity cost that we have to put forward is still completely at your discretion.
That has a price. Okay, so we have a chair of the committee, and I think the chair of the committee, since you ran that board, that meeting, and that was put to a vote. What was the vote on that committee? Was there an objection? It was 3-1.
Right, but the agreement, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Director, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Did we actually have the agreement at this level when we took it? I don't think so.
Actually, you had many of these terms, and at the meeting, what happened was that the issue of risk was defined. And the issue of risk and the issue of whether these permits can even be obtained for signage at the sites was conveyed, which is why you asked us to split it so that we can manage the first phase and see if it's even viable to have anything on these sites before you go to the implementation operation.
But, Mr. Director, my question, I didn't do a good job of asking it. The total revenue for the vendor is really a component A and a component B. Component A is an annual management fee. Component B is a percentage of the revenue. There's a really interesting subtlety when you look at them in the aggregate, which Right. Board Member Gutierrez is really focusing on, which I think is a focus. Did we have that at the time? Did we have that distinction at the time of,
Yes, and at the time, the actual management fee was a percentage of the gross, which we changed.
Okay,
And
that's
we fixed it.
that's the
because
subtlety.
At that time, the proposal was that the management fee
Right,
would be
so-
10%.
Mr. Chair,
hold on. So this is a new item.
So, Mr. Chair, what I was going to suggest, for consideration, is to take this back to operations, now that we have this proposal at this
specific.
refined level,
Yeah.
and let us vet it at that.
Well, you know, I completely agree with that, and I really thank Vice Chair Gutierrez. But she asked another question, and I think that hasn't been answered, and I think we need to get an answer for that. She said that she doesn't want it automatic on a minimum. It has to be based on something more than a minimum. So, whoever negotiated this contract.
It's got to be negotiated with them. I know that they've objected to that provision.
But that was something that was discussed at the operating committee?
That the issue of renewals was the issue of automatic renewals was discussed. There was no discussion on
of the
performance
minimum.
measures
Okay,
whatsoever.
so in other words, these are two issues that then have to be discussed at the operating level, and one is the question of the automatic renewal. 777 makes 21 years. Now, I know we have a 30-day cancellation clause, but nevertheless, I think that has to be a discussed item. And I think the question is whether it's the minimum based on a minimum. And the second question is whether the $100,000 fee, which obviously was not discussed at the operating committee, because at that time it was a percentage. So I think that it was discussed as a percentage, but not as a $100,000 fee. Is that right? Well,
Yeah.
if it's wrong, tell us.
It was discussed. The original proposal was 10%, and the proposal that we took to the operations was 100,000 per site. And I still think the issue was, what is our risk? What is our outlay?
I think we should take it all back.
All right, I've already agreed with you on that, but let's see if there are any other questions before we go to operating committee.
If I may, just one
Go
quick
ahead.
question. Has anybody done like a feasibility that this is doable? Because there was some question about billboards. So all this might be a moot issue.
You're right, but that's why we're risking $150,000, and they're risking.
That's why
they've already risked $300,000. They're going to risk a lot more than that by the time they come back, because this may not be approved.
Right. And the 150 is not guaranteed. It's as necessary to
Yeah.
go through the entitlement process.
Precisely.
It's just capped at 150.
It's a cap. All right, hold on, because.
Yeah, so if I'm remembering correctly, Javier, from our previous discussions on this, and I'm going to speak solely to the management fee of the $100,000, and I know this goes back a while, these discussions and negotiations. And I believe you mentioned it earlier, we don't have to go with them for that management component. We can opt to do it ourselves, or we can go out to bid if we so desired.
We can opt
So
to-
the way I've always seen this is as two separate services.
In the first 7 years, we're asking them to be the manager.
Right.
In year 8, we can
part of the
choose.
contract.
We can choose to be the managers ourselves or do it some other way. That's the way it's structured. Okay.
Madam Vice Chair, you had a question.
One I want to put on the record. They won this contract to do the work, okay? Now, all of a sudden, there is another firm, a third party, that's going to sell the advertising, because you don't sell the advertising. We have to remember that.
No,
So-
that was clarified.
Yes. So the point is, for them, they brought on that third party. And the point that I'm bringing this up is, it is their responsibility. The fact that they brought another arm to do that component of the deal, for them to work it out with that firm that's going to be doing that job, what percentage or fee they get. Because in fact we shouldn't be responsible for that fee. We shouldn't be responsible at all. Whether or not we decide that it should be a bigger 25% or not, the thing is that there shouldn't be an extra fee. It should be one thing. And it could be bigger, I don't question it. And you know what? I'm sorry that I didn't go to operations, because if this would have been the subject of discussion,
It was.
I would have said, not exactly, there was something else, because I read it and I remember I sent in issues that I had with items then. And in fact, I even called and mentioned, I can't go, I know I can't go, but these are my issues. And I felt then the same way I still feel today, but today even worse, because I do believe that this is a good thing if done right. But it's not perfect yet, and it needs tweaking.
Josh, you have something to say.
Madam Vice Chair, I just wanted to clarify. Our original contract was a consulting agreement where we're not paid anything, but it's for consulting services. So that percentage is tied to commission for any works and revenue that results from our consulting services, which again kind of bifurcates the management from the consulting. So when you say our work and what we're supposed to do, our work in the agreement that entitles us up to that 25% was for the consulting to get that program to a conceptual level. So we are now saying the implementation is where that management fee is. And that was clear in the original procurement that we replied to. I don't think the original procurement actually was a manager. It was for consulting. And we are entitled to that commission for that. And in talking with staff, it was always, even when we bid on it, was told to us and at the board level that if you implement this, we will talk about that portion of your business when it comes back, because the board would have to approve that agreement anyway.
My only
Hold
comment.
on. Huh? He got paid, they got paid.
No, we did not. We have not received a dollar. This is purely on revenue generated. So I've spent about $300,000 in countless hours and times with staff in the board. We've not been paid anything.
Carlos, go ahead.
Just one brief comment, and I appreciate all your patience and how hard you worked on this. The problem comes in the math. When you calculate your management fee and you calculate your participation through the commission, you go from the 50% that we felt really uncomfortable with to a 45% ratio. So that's where the problem comes in. The differential just simply isn't there when you do the math. So I would strongly suggest that budget and finance also be involved in the discussion, Marie, if we can.
If I may, board members, and I think, and the treasurer brought up a really good point. When we're doing this, we're trying to calculate what risks are using minimum revenues that they're mentioning and the highest expenses to cover ourselves. So when you do,
quite frankly,
right.
regarding the management,
Yeah.
I think we're open to a fixed number, whether it's 1 or 3 sites, because the truth is our management costs don't increase exponentially for one, or just to be candid, I'm not going to, I mean, I'll negotiate against myself a little, but that's the truth, and this just comes from our conversation. So again, I just wanted to point out to the board that these are kind of bifurcated services, but we're open to discussing that second arm without question. Sure.
So very similar to what we've done with Miami
so-
Intermodal Center and tolls, maybe we need to do the min, max, and somewhere in the mid and show you what that.
Well, I'll
performance
tell
Is
you,
it possible to agree to that number here, if that's the only outstanding thing, to be candid? I mean,
Look, out of fairness to everyone involved, I think that Mr. Allberger and All Vision, have really worked hard. It's been a long negotiation. They've negotiated in good faith. We took it to the operating committee in good faith. It was discussed in good faith. It was decided on a 3-1 vote on good faith. Now, evidently, there's some information that has since come up which really requires us to go back. But what I really don't want is, as chair, is to really prolong this in a very unreasonable manner. So if the finance chair wants to be a part of this, and I understand, what I would like to do is either we go to a committee of the whole, since everybody seems to be so interested in this thing, and everybody has input, or that you have a joint committee meeting, and Jose, you chair that meeting, so unless there's an objection, we'll go
Mr.
to
Chairman,
a joint.
I have a concern, if I
All
may.
right, go ahead.
We are all eligible to go to any
Sure.
of our subcommittees. I think if we start doing committee of the wholes for every issue that is somewhat difficult, it's going to set a precedent for every single committee.
But
I think
but look what's
the-
happening here.
But we all can go to the operations committee and voice our opinion, and I know one thing about the members of the operations committee.
I've
they
got no
take-
objections to the
So I would
committee.
I would object to another committee of the whole. I would like this to go to operations, I have no objection to that, and allow those who wish to express their positions to express it. But if you start making committee of the wholes for everything, it becomes.
Well, what I was
then what's
recommending
the point of the
was
subcommittees?
that they have a joint committee meeting so that we don't have to have two meetings. I'm trying to avoid, and that's what I'm trying to do. Go ahead, Rick.
Mr. Chairman, I think there's clearly a lot of concerns. I've kind of been listening to all my fellow colleagues here on the board, and there seems to be some concerns here that I think require going back to an operations committee. I think that's a good place. Mr. Evia did an excellent job last time at fielding questions and really was very cognizant of everybody's input. I want to add a couple other things to the mix for us to consider prior to
ahead.
going into the operations committee that may have implications on even legal. So, to properly put into context, just and by way of background, I have some familiarity with this business. So I want to let you know that I do had a company that does do digital signage and uses a lot of the same technology. So my context is from that knowledge, not from a layman's perspective. So one of the most significant concerns that I have is the fact that there is a moratorium. The fact that right now, as it stands, Dade County, Miami-Dade County, has a prohibition for billboards, period, unless it's a point of sales. And that is, you're going to put a billboard and you're going to sell what is contained within that facility. Like at Miami Airlines Arena, they're selling stuff that is contained within there. So for us to have this discussion is kind of, very futuristic and optimistic because as it stands today, there's a moratorium. And I know, Mr. Evia, you mentioned that in the building industry, moratoriums are always challenged. That's private sector. We are a public entity. So we are telling another governmental entity, we recognize what you're doing, we recognize you have a policy in place, but we're still going to support this initiative against your wishes. So we're being defiant. And I think, we've been accused of overstepping ourselves and are bounding by another governmental entity, and I think you saw what happened there. So I think we need to be very careful, number one, and moving this forward, we're considering an item that we knowingly are voting in support of something that is a moratorium. And then we're questioning, in essence, the wisdom of the 13 county commissioners which have decided to do that. Now, I asked Mr. Weiss to look into this, and he spoke with the county attorneys, and yes, there is a moratorium. They recognize it. And so I think that has been established from a legal perspective, the legal recognition of that moratorium. So that's something that I think weighs heavily on this board, or should weigh heavily on this board, as it relates to the message and the endorsement that we're sending of the billboard industry as a whole. Assuming that this gets passed, and I have a lot of faith in All Vision and their efforts, I know they have great representation, but assuming that that is the case, we're then going to potentially encounter a legal challenge. Okay, so the county commission voted to do this, but there's going to be a legal challenge. Did they have that legal challenge? So, and that legal challenge will probably be funded by the industry as a whole, and that is people who couldn't get this opportunity. So back to your point, Vice Chair, you talked about kind of opening it up. I don't think it should be just opened up just for the management component. If we're going to get into the billboard business, we should really see what's out there. So that is two major concerns that I have. And I have, I understand they've been patient, and I recognize, Josh, that you put in $300,000. I've invested money in business before, and I've been successful, and that's just the cost of doing business. So with me, it doesn't carry that much weight, and that's just my perspective, because we all take risk in business, and sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. So I think we need to frame it in the proper context. Again, billboards do get approved. It is not unsurmountable, but is in a private capacity. We're a public entity challenging another public entity's organization and decision. So I think we need to be very cognizant of that. The operations committee voted this, but really was, I think, more of a gesture to bring it for greater consideration. You had four members, and that really, wasn't representative of the entire board. And clearly today we've established that there is a lot of concerns, and not just from the 4 members of the Operations Committee. The one no vote was Mr. Holland, and he's not here to speak today, but one of the things that he very aptly brought up, along with Mr. Evia, is if we're going to do this and to recognize the efforts that they have in good faith have invested to date, well, why are we getting into a whole management, percentage of management? Why don't we just do a land lease? Why don't you just pay me a fee, rent that space, we don't get into your business, you don't get into ours, and we're done. And that is probably how traditionally that business, that industry is ran. We don't need to be getting involved into the operations, putting the $3 million. I think since this is a piece of property that's not producing revenue for us, I think it's a great idea. Just, we don't need involved in how they do it. Just pay me a fee, go get your permitting. If you get the permitting, then, you take the risk, you assume the rewards. But I think from a land lease perspective, maybe a simpler approach if this body decides to move forward in endorsing a billboard or getting into the billboard industry and potentially getting the ire of that entire industry, we're going to be infringing. So I think that's another factor that we need to consider at the operations or budget and finance, whatever the case may be. There are simpler ways of pursuing this, and a land lease may just very well be the case, and not a convoluted proposal. Convoluted, and I don't say that. I respect what the executive director and staff has done, but I mean it's a lot simpler the approach than currently is presented. I think we can anticipate having some challenges, and I'm concerned that in light of everything that's happened in Tallahassee, that if we approve something, if we were to approve it today or at operations or at a subsequent time, what is the Board of County Commissioners going to come back? Are we going to start getting those phone calls and saying, hey, why did you guys do this? So I think we need to be very cognizant of that. So I'll stop that from a framing this conversation. I have some questions that I really need clarification. I think this goes more to the staff, executive director, and to Mr. Weiss as we move forward. So, from a procedural perspective, Josh, if I may ask for some, come up, so I ask some questions. I really want clarification. In your estimation, is 18 months? So this contract basically affords you 18 months, and you guys are the professionals at doing this. Is 18 months enough time to, you believe, based on your research and your conversation, that will accomplish what you need in order to get the permits?
Sure. And just to touch base on that 18-month window, while we understand, again, we represent 12 to 20 clients, and a lot are transit agencies, being New Jersey Turnpike, SEPTA in Philadelphia, New Jersey Transit, the LAMTA, Caltrans, which is the entire California Department of Transportation, and a majority of cities and counties that we work with do have complete moratoria. And the point of this project, which is why the EV component is such a great component, is to work with the county. It's to understand there's a moratoria, and we believe this is something that they're going to see the benefits of providing free EV charging to their residents.
So you believe you'll get it done? I'm sorry to cut you off.
I'm not going that far, but in terms of the moratoria, I believe that they're going to say that if they want to approve this, and if they don't, you're not going to do it. You're not going to challenge, no one's legally challenging the moratoria. It's working with them.
Understood, and I appreciate that, Josh. So I just want to make sure that we're giving you ample time to be successful. That was really the question. If you're saying you're not going so far, what I wanted to establish, if you feel that is the appropriate time, then I want to make sure that we put a limit on that, not 18, come back and then change it to 24.
I mean, again, if I could ask for an indefinite time, but if in month,
we wouldn't.
And with all due respect, you know how government meetings work and agendas get forwarded. If you're in month 17 and I'm 3 months from them having a final approval because people aren't at meetings, I would hope you would consider that extension. I can't speak to the, I can't.
Again, there's 13, 12 people on this board. You'd have to query each one of us to see what they feel. So again, I just want to make sure that we're giving you ample time and that you have what you believe is the 18 months is what you've agreed to. And I want to make sure that we put a defined, if this does move forward, that we have a defined deadline. So not to come back and this a perpetual opportunity indefinitely. So the EV stations, asking you a question about the EV stations, will those be done simultaneously? Will those EV stations be done only if you get the permit? Because you mentioned about the great benefits to the community. Are those EV stations going to be done, and then we're going to get the approval of the billboards? Explain to me that process.
They're going to be one and the same. The EV charging stations cost considerable money, give or take $200,000 to $250,000 all in. You have to trench and so forth. So we're certainly not going to go and spend more money if I don't have the right to put up the revenue generator for this project. That would not.
So they're
be
contingent
beneficial for
upon
either
the
of us.
approval. They're
Of course,
contingent upon the
yes.
approval. Okay, I just want a clarification. Make sure. I got a question, I guess, from the secretary. What does currently DOT do? Because I think you guys have been at this a lot longer. What is the policy, if you will, from a DOT perspective? And are you all in the billboard industry business?
I think the current policy is that we do not use our right-of-way for this purpose. That doesn't mean that we are not considering it for the future. As revenues dwindle from fuel taxes, certainly we're looking for all potential to generate for revenue, and that's a discussion that's being had, and we haven't got to the final decision yet, but we are looking for opportunities for the future.
Josh, I'm sorry, we've got a couple more questions. I just want to get some clarification because we haven't had, unfortunately, I wish we would have had an opportunity to answer these questions privately, but this is the only forum I've had to talk to you all. From a charging station perspective, have you all done that? Do you have a history in these charging stations? Is this a unique concept, and are we helping you pioneer this?
No, there's about 3 existing clients right now. They're at slightly more advanced stages because they've approved that concept. That are considering this. And quite frankly, everyone we talk to, the key is not necessarily our agencies. It's when you're working with the neighboring cities are just in love with a revenue generator that also provides free EV charging for their residents and the people that drive through their communities.
Thank you, Mr. Schorberger. Mr. Rodriguez-Pena, I've been as lenient because I think that you're bringing up important issues. But since we're going back to committee, I think the proper place for details of this sort to be worked out, and I'm sorry that you have not had the opportunity to have them answered. I don't know why. My experience with Javier Rodriguez is that when you call him, he immediately answers, and any questions that you have, you can go through Mr. Rodriguez, and I'm sure he'd be happy to bring. To answer these questions, but I think that this is something that we ought to do at the committee level. So are there any other questions that need to be asked at this time? All right, procedurally, here's where I think we are, and where did Mr. Weiss go? Let's wait for him to make sure I don't make a procedural mistake here. Mr. Weiss, this is a procedural issue now. Procedurally, where we are, as I understand it, and correct me if I say anything wrong, this board deliberated on this issue, on these issues. This board came to a conclusion on these issues. This board instructed the administration to put out a bid. That bid was approved. The bid went out. A process of selection we went through a process. The administration, headed by Javier Rodriguez, has negotiated this issue. It has come back and it's gone through committee. It's been put to a vote at committee. Now it turns out that there's some new information that has to be clarified. So we're going to go back to committee. I have ruled that this is going to be a joint committee of finance and operations, and that Mr. Jose Avia will be chairing that committee meeting, but all the members of both committees will have a vote on that, and then it'll come back to us for discussion after that has been concluded. Now, that's where we stand. Are there any questions or any challenges to that? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a voting member of any of those committees, so I think I have a lot more to say, and I don't know what are the exceptions to that rule, but if you want, that's your desire. But
Mr. Pena, you were appointed to the Finance Committee, so you
are a voting member of the
I stand corrected. Thank you for that appointment.
So you will have a vote, and I I know for a fact that you do have a voice, so I don't have any questions that you'll be asking.
A voice, huh?
He has a voice and now he has a vote, so, on the committee. So is there any other discussion on this? Yeah. Go ahead.
How long has this, I heard Luz mention that this has been going on for a while. Just for my benefit as a new board member, how long are we talking about?
Sorry, it's been 1 year and 4 months since we got the approval to move forward and bring forward an implementation plan.
Okay, thank you.
It's been a long birth. This is a lot more than 9 months. And it's been a very complicated process. And and I'll tell you, to All Vision and to Mr. Scharberg, and I just let me say, I apologize that we've taken so long. I think there's good faith involved here. I think all these questions are being asked in good faith. And just be patient with us, and let's see if we can get through this thing and finalize this matter quickly. So I would ask that you call this committee into session as quickly as possible and come up, hopefully by the next board meeting we can conclude this.
Mr. Chair, if we could have a motion to defer this item to refer this item back.
Seconded.
To the joint committee.
The motion's been made and seconded. The motion is that this matter be deferred today and that it be referred to a joint meeting of the Operating and Finance Committee chaired by Mr. Jose Evia, and that that meeting be held before the next board meeting, which is in the end of May, and that it come back to this board at the May meeting. Is there further discussion on this item?
As long as it's not on May 19th, we're okay.
Okay, so
Please.
all those in favor say aye. Opposed? So it carries. What's the next item?
10. Yeah.
What's the next item? Item 9B, MDX procurement contract number RFQ 10-05, work program number 11211.050, construction engineering inspection CE&I services for Central Boulevard reconstruction for $458,381.91, endorsed by the Operating Committee of 3/19/14. I hope we can do better on this one than we did on the last one.
This is very straightforward, and Juan Toledo is prepared to address the issues.
One.
I'll try to be brief but detailed. Basically, this is for the CEI services for the Central Boulevard project that's ongoing right now next to us. Basically, this contract's a little bit behind schedule. This amendment is to allow the CEI to continue to oversee the entire project through completion and close it out.
Simple question, is the county paying for it? Is the airport paying for it?
This portion of the work, the county is not paying for it. This is a portion that it would be a 50-50 split with the DOT as part of the agreement. Again, the construction is behind schedule. The contractor is being assessed liquidated damages as of March 12th of this year, and we anticipate that the monies that we're going to be retaining or holding back as penalties are going to cover the costs, the additional costs that we're asking for this contract.
So in other words, we pay for it 50-50 with FDOT and then we recuperate it.
That's correct.
We do recuperate it.
Yes, sir.
Well,
50%.
you say no and he says yes. Now who?
No.
Well, the expenditures on this contract are paid 50-50 with DOT.
Yes.
What we're doing though is, as part of the construction contract, we withhold the liquidated damages from the construction contract, so those dollars don't get paid out to the
Look, I have a very
contractor.
simple question.
What we'd end up doing is transferring the money saved from the construction project to cover the additional costs that are being allocated to the CI.
You're saying that this is going to cost
But the
458,000.
50-50 split is only for what's actually paid out to the consultants.
But this statement says that it's going to cost us 458.
That's the additional cost for the services.
Question is, who pays for that?
This cost, this 458 is, it would be a 50/50 split with DOT.
We pay half of it,
Yes, that's correct.
and we don't recuperate that money.
We would, in essence, we don't recuperate it, we save it from the other contract that we're withholding penalties.
Offset it.
Different. You
We offset it. I'm sorry. It's an offset. I apologize.
Yeah,
Means there's money
Impact to
that's coming
MDX
out of the check.
is zero, essentially. The impact, the bottom line is the impact is zero, because there's an offset, dollar for dollar offset, equivalent to the 50% obligation. That is MDX's obligation. There is no refunding from the FDOT.
Well, let me make sure I understand this right, if I may interrupt. If we pay out, we're supplementing the contract 50% MDX FDOT as part of the CEI services. MDX recovers any money that comes back from LDs, and that could be a dispute with the contractor, which may or may not offset anything you pay out, okay? But I would say that we need to true it up at the end of the day.
That's
If there is value savings to the project in total, the commitment of the agency was 50/50.
Mr.
It's
Secretary,
not
that's exactly right, Mr.
some
Secretary.
percentage
Well
different
said.
than that.
Yep.
That is correct, and we true it up at the end, but the 50/50 is only for what gets paid out.
any further questions on this issue? We're now on item 9B. What is the will of this board? There is a motion, is there a second? It's been seconded. It's been moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now on item 9C. Procurement,
MDX, you want to read it or do you want me to?
go ahead.
MDX procurement, contract number ITB 11-02, underground utility locating services for the Intelligent Transportation System, ITS, endorsed by Operations Committee 4/15/14.
Mr. Director?
Ivan Del Campo is prepared to address this item.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. The requested action for your consideration today is a motion to approve a contract renewal with High Tech Engineering, Inc., underground utility services. The committee history, this item was endorsed by the Operations Committee earlier this month. And give you a brief summary. Back in 2001, High Tech Engineering, Inc. was awarded the contract. The initial contract term is 3 years with one optional year renewal and not to exceed contract amount of $400,000. Our recommendation today is to exercise the 1-year renewal option and no additional contract capacity. Our recommendation is pretty much based on the outstanding services provided by the vendor, and this action advances MDX strategic goals by basically complying with the Underground Facility Damage Prevention and Safety Act, Chapter 556, which requires the services of this company. The fiscal impact, the funds for the services under this contract have been properly accounted and approved under the MDX operations budget. Do you have any questions?
All right, are there any questions on item 9C? Are there any comments or statements that need to be made? If not, what's the will of this board?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve, and it's been seconded. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of item 9C, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So it's carried. The last item, which was the Miami International Center conveyance, has been discussed, and that is being deferred to a special meeting, which hopefully will occur on May the 16th.
The 12th.
May the 12th.
Yes, the day of the budget workshop.
Oh, I'm sorry, the day of the budget meeting, 1 hour before. So we'll allocate 1 hour. You told me that it would take half an hour to discuss. I doubt it. So let's allocate 1 hour for it. And is that all right with everyone? Does anybody have any questions on that? All right, do we need an action on this? Is there any motion for
Should be a motion
deferral?
to defer this
There's a
to May
move it.
12th.
Is there a motion to defer this to the next board meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, which is a special meeting for this on May the 12th.
Move.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
At what time?
What time will the meeting be, Mr.
What time is budget?
Director?
If it's an hour
What is
before, it'll be
convenient? What do you?
the board meeting, which is the budget workshop starts at 3 o'clock, so right after the budget workshop.
So after, not an hour before?
After.
So 3?
Correct. We do the budget workshop.
It's a
Whatever we
workshop.
conclude, we go to budget and finance right after that, which gets endorsed, and right after that, we'll do the special meeting.
Perfect.
Start at 3, is that correct?
Tentatively it'd be approximately 4 o'clock.
Correct.
Well, assuming that the budget workshop is through by 4 o'clock, yes.
The announcement here says Budget and Finance Committee is at 4 o'clock on the 12th. So after that meeting.
Right, it's
Okay.
a one item, the budget and
So it's
finance
not
is a
at
one
3,
item
it's
to
at
approve
4
the budget.
o'clock.
Okay. Just to advise the board, we're hosting the executive board from Tallahassee this month. On that Tuesday, the 12th, we have a workshop to discuss our future work program development efforts.
What time is that?
It's all day. And so, my hope is to coordinate it so the secretary could be here, at 4:30 or 4, whatever he can get here. So,
Good.
just to let you know, that's what we're trying to coordinate.
All right. Okay?
I think you need to change.
No, you're gonna chair. All right, is there anything else?
Yes, there's item E. Evaluation, performance.
Oh, I'm sorry. The evaluation performance. All right, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The executive committee met this afternoon, earlier today before the board meeting, and we went through the performance evaluation for our executive director. And I pulled the scoring that he received based on the evaluation of all the members. And basically, he got a 99.17% vote of excellence from all of us together. I mean, thank you, everybody, for not allowing him to be the perfect individual. That was really nice. So 99.17 was the percentage. Basically, what's before you is the performance measure. He passed with flying colors, and the committee just adopted, and this is up for a vote now as a motion, to accept what the committee voted on, which was really just what's on the contract, which was his merit raise and his 1% COLA. And that was it.
Just one thing I would add, which is that under his contract, Javier has the ability to accumulate this annual leave, which basically becomes an unfunded liability for the agency. And as salary increases or COLAs are added to that, it gets paid out of the salary at the time he retires. And so that is a benefit to Javier. And what he's done is he's agreed basically to take out a payout of 80 hours today, at today's dollars, which in my view is less than he's really entitled to under his contract. So that's a third element to what the executive committee approved for him.
So you're not going anywhere.
All right.
So,
Is
would
there
you like to read
is there a
into the
motion?
record
Is there-
the motion?
I think you stated it fine, which is to endorse the recommendation of the executive committee on those three items: the salary,
Wasn't salary.
4.5%, a bonus equal to 4.5% of his salary, a bonus equal to 1% of his salary, which is his COLA, and a payout of 80 hours of his annual leave.
Motion to that effect. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Is there further?
May I make a
Everybody's
suggestion?
seconding.
Why don't we make this a unanimous motion or a unanimous second?
Okay. Is there further discussion on this motion on item E?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that, and I say this everywhere I go, the city of Aventura has been very fortunate when you look at what's going on in other municipalities. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people believe is one of the best city managers around. I was skeptical when I was asked to join this board by Governor Scott, because I'm so spoiled. I always tell everybody in the last 9 years in Aventura with how government is run. And I've been so impressed with Javier Rodriguez and how he runs this agency and the professionalism of the staff, it's really like I'm in Aventura. And it's been a real bonus that this board is so collegiate and we all get along so well and we just get the work done, which is also something I've enjoyed in the city of Aventura. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, I echo the unanimous motion and the unanimous second and the unanimous vote, because you deserve everything you're getting for everything that you're doing and how you motivate your staff to act just as you do, and your skills in negotiating with our vendors and ourselves and everything else. I mean, the whole package is great, and I'm very, very proud to be a member of this agency and to have accepted that position because of all of you and especially Javier. So congratulations.
Thank you. All right.
Anywhere.
Thank you.
Just for a formality, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, it carries unanimously.
Now that you voted, based on item A of today's agenda, you know, I was skeptical, but I'm kidding.
Well, okay, in that case, then change my vote from 100% to 99%. Anything else to come before this board?
I'd like to make an announcement, Chair.
Yes, please.
Just to have you keep watching your emails, you'll get an e-invite for the tunnel ceremony on the 19th at 10 o'clock, when the ceremony will be, and the actual opening the traffic will be announced at that ceremony.
Well, I would like to ask Vice Chair Gutierrez to represent all of us. I will be out of town, but I think it's important that MDX be a part of that. Please.
I'll be glad to represent as well. I have to be there. But yeah, it'll be great if a lot of you can make it. It's a great day.
Good. Is there anything else to come before this board? Fingers crossed, but the chairman's comments are this: keep your fingers crossed on Friday, and on Friday have a cup of champagne or a scotch or a bourbon or whatever you drink in the name of Javier Rodriguez, Fausto Gomez, and all those that have worked. Shelley, you're the go-between between us and at the board, so you too. If we can get by this one, I think there's certainly God is certainly on our side, because I see so many things going in our direction, and the make is just around the corner, and I think if we can get the market by the end of May. To adjourn. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. We stand adjourned.